The military, a place where men and women are taught to be obedient and obey the orders from their superiors. But what happens when a superior officer orders the murder of a fellow shipmate and ultimately gets away with it? Welcome to The Last Supper. Hello and welcome to episode 10 of The Last Supper, a true crime podcast. My name is Colson Davis and I'm an amateur chef, a true crime junkie, a music and video producer, and a content creator. Every episode of this podcast, I'll be telling you a true death penalty case story, and at the same time, I'll be cooking that criminal's last requested meal before they were executed. Now, I want to apologize for my lack of episodes recently. I've had a lot going on, but everything's good. I got a couple great episodes lined up for you guys, and I'm super excited. This week, we are looking at Travis Hittson, who did not request a special last meal, so he got the prison-issued meal for that day. And that consisted of meatloaf patties, mashed potatoes with brown gravy, red beans, carrots, peas, cornbread, bread pudding, and an orange beverage. You can find all the recipes I've written for these episodes at lastsupperpodcast.com/blog. And with that being said, let's dive into the case of Travis Hittson. On June 16, 1992, loggers in Warner Robins, Georgia, made a 911 call to report a bad smell in the wooded area near their work site. Detective John Holland of the Houston County Sheriff's Office was dispatched to the area, where he found a gruesome discovery: the mutilated body of a young male in a shallow grave without its hands, feet, or head. Ed Lukemeyer, former district attorney of Houston County, said, quote, "This was not the scene of the murder. This was the disposal." Detectives got right to work on the investigation. Soon they found a witness, Louise Davidson, who told police that she saw a black Thunderbird with Florida license plates emerge from a very rarely used dirt road on April 5th. She said it was suspicious because no one ever used that road, and that's why she took a mental note about the car's description. Louise was able to capture the license plate numbers and describe that two men occupied the vehicle. Down the same road was where the body was discovered 2 months later. The torso was taken in by the medical examiner. Other than not having a head, there was no cause of death found, which could mean that the body was decapitated alive and that was the cause, or there were more injuries to the rest of the body that wasn't available to examine. However, there was a unique scar and injury to the torso's knee that previously got surgery to fix, and this was a major clue to identifying the body. After a week of searching for clues, the Houston County Police Department got a call from the Navy base in Pensacola, Florida. They had just gotten a call from a woman named Edward Utterbeck who was concerned because she wasn't able to get a hold of her son, and the Navy officer informed her that her son went AWOL from the USS Forester since April 6th. AWOL means leaving and not returning to a military base when they didn't have permission to do so. The Navy officer relayed this information to the police, where they also uncovered that this man had a knee injury, and then it clicked. Even without fingerprints or dental records, the investigators were confident that this body belonged to a young Navy man named Conway Utterbeck. Conway Utterbeck was a junior sailor who joined the engineering department in the United States Navy, and according to his mother, this was his dream. While in the Navy, Utterbeck had a spotless record until he went AWOL. Right before this, he had called his mom to tell her that he was going on a trip to Georgia and added that she shouldn't worry because he, quote, was with friends. Back in Florida, the police were talking to many people to find out who Utterbeck went on this trip with, and they were soon pointed to two other Navy members, Ed Vollmer and Travis Hittson. And before we continue this story, make sure you're subscribed or following the show wherever you're watching or listening. If you're on YouTube right now, I want you to look at the subscribe button. And if that little subscribe button lit up for you, go ahead and click it. And also check this out, like the video. And if the like button just lit up, like the video too. It really helps out the show. Now back to the story. Travis Hittson was born in 1971, and he was the third of four children to Patty and Eldon Hittson, who were both descended from generations of alcoholism. Travis was often completely ignored and abused by his family. Mary Schultz, a social worker, said, quote, Travis's mother would completely ignore him when he came home from school, not acknowledge his greetings, and never say a word to him while he was there. It appears as if most of the family members were numb or numbed themselves with alcohol or drugs. The only vivid expressions of emotion occurred when the elder, Mr. Hittson, was drunk and emotionally abused Travis. When Travis was a young boy, his father, in a drunken stupor, would wake Travis up in the middle of the night and force him out of bed by his hair and told him it's time to be a man. Travis, who was always said to be a nice, quiet, and meek child, would just cry at these attacks, which made his father even angrier. In about 6th or 7th grade, Travis met another young boy named Travis Fletcher, who we'll refer to as Fletcher. They met through his school's wrestling team, and Travis quickly became part of the Fletcher family. Eventually, he started calling Evelyn Fletcher Mom. Evelyn is Travis Fletcher's mother. She described that Travis had a lot of issues, and he was often bullied by other kids and had trouble fitting in at school and at home. She also commented on his hygiene and clothing. Quote, Travis came to us to advise him on hygiene and clothing so that he would fit in at school. We taught him about deodorant and cologne and told him that he shouldn't wear his hair in wild styles. He talked to him about not acting silly in public places because that was getting him the wrong kind of attention. Travis was eager to learn so he could have friends. He was always kind and polite and didn't get into fights even when he was teased. Travis was always someone who was searching for approval and validation from others, and he tried everything he could to make the Fletcher family and his own family happy. Travis and Fletcher grew closer and closer. His mother would shuttle the boys to and from wrestling matches and continued to counsel him on keeping up with hygiene. Travis became a loyal friend to Fletcher, so loyal in fact that Evelyn Fletcher described it as a fault. Travis once took the blame for Fletcher when Evelyn found cigarettes outside her home, and another time he took the blame when Fletcher's cousin stole sunglasses from a shop. Travis ended up telling the truth in both instances, but said he didn't want his friends to get in trouble because he wanted them to keep liking him. When Travis was 15, he too had developed his own problems with alcohol and was struggling socially and failing school. He started taking money from his parents and used it to buy stuff for his friends so that they would like him. Evelyn said that she knew Travis was always a good man who was, quote, never vicious, mean, or violent in any way, and simply lacked the affection from his own family. Around 1988, when Travis was 17 years old, he enlisted in the United States Navy. Someone said, quote, Travis joined the Navy because that was the branch of service his dad served in. He wanted his approval so bad. All of Travis's friends and Navy buddies all described him the same way. Kind, awkward, and very naive, always trying to please everyone. Travis was always struggling financially, but he always sacrificed himself in that aspect to take care of everyone else. Friends of his would sometimes make dinner for him, and in return he would come back with bags of groceries, even if he couldn't afford it. He would often spend his time with one of his superiors, Chief Officer Brian Hunt, and his wife, Anita Hunt. Anita described, quote, Travis quickly became part of our family. On weekends when Travis would come over, he would get up with the kids in the morning and fix them breakfast and play with them. My husband and I would get up in the morning, and he would be out in the living room with the kids playing on hands and knees or watching cartoons. He would be playing with trucks and cars with my son or dolls with the girls. It didn't matter to him as long as the kids were having fun. He seemed like he was just one of the kids having a good old time. My kids loved Travis. He was like a big brother to them, and if Travis didn't come home with my husband, they would always ask, where is Travis? When is Travis coming over? Travis would watch the kids for us while my husband and I would go out to dinner, movies, or shopping. He was very caring and gentle with the kids, unquote. For some time, Travis was living with a friend and supervisor of his, Petty Officer Kimberlin, and Travis was paying for half the rent. Even though they agreed that this was both of their apartments, Travis treated it like he was a visitor, always asking permission to use the bathroom and kitchen. Travis quickly became Kimberlin's go-to man for almost everything. Anytime anyone had an issue, Travis was always the first person to drop what he was doing to help. Kimberlin said it took a while to show Travis how to do things, sometimes 4 or 5 times, but once he understood, quote, you'd never have to show him again, and he tried harder than any other worker I had the privilege of being in charge of, end quote. While most of his comrades came to truly value Travis, he always believed that he was never accepted. I mean, yeah, his own family wouldn't even talk to him or accept him. He's been living his whole life looking for family, and he was never able to establish roots, so why would he feel accepted here too? Travis remained very shy and socially awkward, and he was often teased for his choice in clothing and his extreme gullibility. Superior Officer Brian Hunt once found Travis holding a light bulb to his forehead and the end of megaleds in his hands, while other crewmates turned the handle, which would have sent 500 volts through his hands and the light bulb. Hunt had to explain to Travis that this was very dangerous and would get him seriously hurt. Travis's drinking got worse as the years went on. Although the military is a place where many men and women drank heavily, a lot of his peers found his drinking to be excessive. Travis would regularly get blackout drunk, and as a prank, his crewmates told him that while drunk, he ran around without any clothes on. Travis bought the story for over a day, stressed that it was actually true. Another time, he was so drunk that he went into the wrong apartment and was arrested for breaking and entering. Time went on and Travis was about to have a big change. While stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, Travis had made many friends, especially with Chief Brian Hunt and his wife Anita and children, and his other supervisor, Kimberlyn. He also got close to Larry Bardroff and his family, who also said amazing things about Travis. This was all about to change when the ship Travis was stationed on was preparing to move from Jacksonville to Pensacola, Florida in late 1991. Travis at this time didn't have a car, and the Hunt and Bardroff families lived far away from the base, and he lost some very close friends where he could feel like family. He was cut off from people who truly valued Travis and looked after him, since we have found that Travis isn't really that street smart and needs some guidance here and there. After he lost that, he was vulnerable, looking for a new group of friends that he could view as family. Since losing his closest friends, Travis started hanging out with another crewmate, Edward Vollmer, his superior and direct supervisor. Ed Vollmer was known by many of his shipmates and personal acquaintances to be controlling, manipulative, and was known to study murder and how to get away with it. He talked about the best ways to kill someone and not be discovered, and he made threats against the life of more than one person on board. We don't know much about Ed's childhood or any of his life up until the Navy and his rocky relationship with his ex-wife, Connie Michelle Vollmer. Michelle described an incident where Ed told her that he would be working on the base. She called the base and found out that he was in fact not working, which enraged Ed. She described, quote, "He got furious with me and told me to stay off his fucking back and out of his fucking business. He knew I'd caught him in a lie and he was furious about it. He shoved the car door into me with both his hands. The door slammed hard against me and I fell down. As soon as I fell on the ground, Ed jumped out of the car and started punching me in the face with both fists, saying, quote, 'You stupid fucking bitch, stay out of my business,' end quote." She continued with another story, quote, "In late September or early October 1989, we got into a fight one night because he would not turn the TV down when the baby was trying to sleep. I told him I could not do this anymore and wanted a divorce. I also told him I was moving back to Warner Robins. For the first time in our relationship, I was absolutely serious and certain that I would leave him. I had started to realize that I did not have to subject myself to Ed's behavior. Ed reacted violently to my confidence. He grabbed me and dragged me into the bedroom. He ripped off my gown and said I was his fucking wife, and this relationship was not over," end quote. She also said, quote, "He wanted complete control and would always get his way." Ed went on to cause many interpersonal problems on the ship, which were serious enough for him to be referred for a psychological evaluation in 1991. At the end of the evaluation, Ed was diagnosed with severe antisocial personality disorder, and his presence in the Navy would continue to cause major issues, and the evaluator recommended he be discharged. According to the men who served alongside Ed, he was very intelligent. Ed was accepted into the Navy's elite nuclear program, but his extreme intelligence gave Ed a narcissistic superiority complex and a perverse desire to play with people's heads, and he was very good at it. Vollmer wanted to be in control and would pick on the weakest of the bunch and sought out the person least likely to fight back, said Petty Officer Landon. In Ed's relationship with Travis, this is exactly what he found. Travis's lower rank, gullibility, alcoholism, and desperation for approval made him peculiarly vulnerable to Ed's manipulation. Ed would go on to subject Travis to countless integrities, including sexual humiliation and teasing. Ed would also manipulate Travis into buying beers and cigarettes for him, despite Travis's lack of money, and would force him to run errands for him off base despite him not being allowed to leave the ship. One time, Travis got fed up with Ed's behavior and attempted to stand up to him, but Ed retaliated and locked Travis in the shop's cage on the ship for hours to punish him. In April 1992, Ed invited Travis to come spend the weekend with him at a property his parents owned in Warner Robins in central Georgia. Ed said his parents were out of town and that the weather would be beautiful this time of year and it would be a great getaway from the Navy. Travis was hesitant at first based on all the torment Ed gave Travis recently, but Travis ultimately accepted the invitation. On April 3rd, they were ready to depart for their trip when Conway Utterbeck, a fellow sailor, showed up ready to go on the trip also. Travis and Conway were confused since Ed failed to inform them that he invited both of them to come. The two were confused but accepted it as a mistake and left for Georgia. The group left in the morning and arrived at the property in the evening, where they had to sleep in the shed in the backyard for the first night, and then they got the spare key from a family friend the next morning. The next day after getting the key, the three men hung around the house for a while until Ed and Travis left, leaving Utterbeck alone at the house. Ed and Travis spent the day going around several local bars. On the way back to the house, Ed started talking to Travis about Utterbeck and how he had a hit list and wanted to kill Ed and Travis. At this point, Travis was extremely intoxicated and started to believe Ed's story. Ed said to Travis, quote, "We need to get him before he gets us." After arriving to the house, Ed put on a bulletproof vest and grabbed a sawed-off shotgun and a .22 caliber handgun from the car and gave Travis an aluminum baseball bat. According to court documents, Travis's later confession and evidence, this is what happened on the night of April 4th, 1992. With weapons in hand, Travis Hittson and Ed Vollmer entered the home where they saw Conway Utterbeck sleeping in a recliner chair in the living room. On Ed's instruction, Travis entered the living room and hit Utterbeck in the head multiple times with the aluminum bat. Utterbeck awoke from the attack saying, quote, "Travis, whatever have I done to you?" Travis then dragged Utterbeck into the kitchen to avoid getting blood on the carpet. Ed was waiting there and stepped on Utterbeck's hand and handed Travis the .22 handgun and told him to shoot. Travis raised the gun to Utterbeck's head and shot once, killing him instantly. A couple hours later, Ed told Travis that they needed to dismember Utterbeck's body and dispose of it. Ed decided that it would be the easiest to saw off Utterbeck's limbs with a hacksaw from the shed. As they began to dismember Utterbeck, Travis became sick. Travis was ordered to saw off Utterbeck's hand, and he did what he was told. He began to saw into Utterbeck's wrist before he backed away and said he couldn't do it. Ed stepped in to finish. Ed continued to cut off Utterbeck's hands, feet, and head, and Travis later confessed that Ed was adamant about removing Utterbeck's genitals and rectum. And Ed did just that, carved out Utterbeck's rectum and removed his genitals with a knife. Brutal. Ed and Travis then proceeded to pack Utterbeck's body into multiple garbage bags. The pair then loaded up the torso in Ed's black Thunderbird and drove to a wooded area down a deserted logging road to bury the body, where Louise Davidson witnessed the Thunderbird with Florida license plates. This was in fact Travis Hittson and Ed Vollmer she witnessed leaving the logging road on April 5th. The two men returned to Ed's house and spent the next several hours cleaning up all the evidence and blood and storing the baseball bat and saw in the shed behind the house, where the men slept the first night. After they finished cleaning, the men loaded up the rest of the garbage bags with Utterbeck's body into the trunk and started driving back to the ship. Along the way back, the two buried the rest of the body parts that were all later found by investigators in multiple locations. This is when communication between the Houston County Sheriff's Department and the Naval Criminal Investigative Services, the NCIS, began, and they started to question many of Utterbeck's crewmates, including Travis and Ed. Travis at first lied to investigators and said that yes, the three of them did travel to Warner Robins, Georgia, to Ed's parents' home, but nothing wrong happened there. He said that the three men did return to Pensacola, and they dropped Utterbeck off at a local bar before returning to the ship. They also questioned Ed too, and he relayed the same exact story. But something wasn't adding up for the investigators. Why was it that Utterbeck supposedly returned to Pensacola, yet his body was found in Georgia? This wasn't adding up. The investigators continued to interview crewmates and soon found out more disturbing facts and stories about Ed's behavior in the Navy and personal life. Police were preparing to interview both the men again and took special interest in Ed because he was recently discharged from the Navy because he had possession of marijuana on base. Officers determined he was living off base on his own, and they planned to question him at his home, but when they arrived for the interview, they found Ed was missing. He had skipped town before the interview could happen. With Ed missing, the investigators then turned their attention on Travis, who they soon re-interviewed. Special Agent Kelly of the NCIS conducted the interview of Travis and said that Travis looked overwhelmed as he retraced the events of the trip. Kelly said that Travis's face was bright red. He was almost shaking. Under the pressure from the investigation and his own conscience, Travis confessed to shooting Utterbeck between the eyes while also implicating Ed Vollmer. Travis agreed to take investigators to the rest of Utterbeck's remains and other crime scene evidence. Using dental records from the recovered head, police were able to positively identify that the remains were Conway Utterbeck. The medical examiner confirmed that Utterbeck was in fact shot in the forehead, confirming Travis's story. Investigators also searched Ed's property and found the .22 handgun, the aluminum bat, and the hacksaw used to dismember the body. Luminol testing found large spots of blood in the kitchen. With this new evidence, the rest of the body, and a confession, Travis was placed under arrest for the murder. Ed was also soon arrested for the murder, but he refused to talk to the investigators. Petty Officer Landon said in a statement, quote, "Everyone was shocked that Travis was involved and could not believe that he was involved. Travis had basically confessed to me one night while we were drinking, but I just could not believe him. On the other hand, it wasn't any stretch of the imagination that Ed was involved. I don't want to excuse Travis's actions, and I know that he needs to be punished by spending the rest of his life in prison for what he did. I am just trying to convey that nothing like this was in Travis's character to do, and that it never would have happened but for Ed deciding to make it happen. In the Navy, you are at the mercy of who you are under. If somebody else had been in charge of us, I don't think anything like this could have ever happened." The trial was pretty straightforward, as you can imagine. The state sent Travis to be evaluated by a state psychologist. There were many issues brought up in the trial about the evaluation. Travis was in the evaluation for 2 days, and on both days the psychiatrist gave Travis his Miranda rights, and Travis agreed that anything said would be used against him in court. He verbally agreed and signed the form stating he read and understood his rights. The issues arose when the defense counsel didn't show up on time to the first meeting and didn't witness the Miranda rights being agreed to. This was ultimately thrown out in court because Travis did sign and agree to being asked questions. The psychiatrist didn't testify much in the trial except during the sentencing phase. The defense put on a mitigating argument that Travis was abused as a child, was manipulated into the murder, and Petty Officer Landon was called to testify on behalf of Travis, saying that he confessed to the murder and seemed remorseful. The state then used the psychiatrist to dispute the remorse, saying that during the evaluation, Travis called the victim a hillbilly and a profane name. Other than that, no results of the evaluation were used for or against Travis. The jury deliberated everything we've been through and found Travis guilty of malice murder, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, and theft by taking. The jury agreed that the crime was outrageously vile, horrible, and inhumane and recommended death. And in March 1993, Travis was sentenced to death for the murder of Conway Utterbeck. Ed Vollmer was also charged with the same crimes. However, he decided to plead guilty for his involvement in the murder, and he was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, which I think is crazy. Ed facilitated the entire thing. At least give him life without parole. He's a horrible human being. Vollmer was denied parole in 1999 and again in 2015. Reconsideration was set for 2020, but during Travis's clemency hearing, facts were stated about Ed's involvement in the murder, and the Board of Pardons and Parole decided to extend Ed's reconsideration to the maximum 8-year window, which would make his next hearing in 2024. No articles have been written about Ed since 2016, and as of now, I think he's still in prison, and he must be still in prison. This is a crazy murder. In appeal, Travis's counsel argued that his constitutional rights were violated when the judge allowed the state psychologist to recount the damaging hillbilly statement Travis said about Utterbeck. Travis argues that the testimony violated his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. However, a Butts County judge disagreed, saying that a state mental health expert was allowed to testify to anything if Miranda warnings were given preceding the evaluation, which in this case is valid. Travis verbally and physically agreed that anything could and would be used against him in court. Appeals proceeded to the state and eventually the United States Supreme Court, which both rejected his appeal and upheld Travis's death sentence. Travis then filed for clemency, which is where I found most of this information about his childhood and many statements from his Navy buddies. On February 16, 2016, the Georgia Board of Pardons and Parole denied Travis's clemency without a reason. On February 17th, Travis ate his last meal consisting of meatloaf patties, brown gravy, mashed potatoes, peas and carrots, red beans, cornbread, bread pudding, and an orange beverage at Georgia State Prison in Jackson. Warden Bruce Chapman then escorted Travis to the execution chamber. Travis was strapped down on the gurney, and Warden Chapman asked if Travis had any last words. Travis replied, "No, sir. I'm alright." He did agree to a prayer being read though. Warden Chapman left the room at 8:04 p.m. and the lethal injection drug started flowing a couple minutes later. Travis blinked repeatedly for several minutes and then took multiple deep breaths before going limp. Travis was pronounced dead at 8:14 p.m. and with that, Travis Hittson's sentence was served. Alright, and that concludes the case about Travis Hittson and Ed Vollmer. What a kind of crazy case, honestly, in my opinion. Travis didn't deserve to be executed. Ed deserved to be executed. And I feel like most of you are going to agree with this statement because Ed is this crazy psycho manipulator, control freak kind of guy. And Travis was just a kid, kid trying to fit in. And it's really unfortunate that he was executed and got the death penalty and Ed didn't get as much as a punishment, I feel like, for being a worse person, to be honest. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the case. Let's dive into this last meal. This looks absolutely delicious, as always. I have two confessions to make here. I've never had meatloaf in my entire life. Isn't that kind of crazy? And I've never had bread pudding. I don't know how popular bread pudding is really, but it looks like French toast a little bit. Let's dive in and try this meal. Glaze on there, a bit of that gravy. Look at that. Wow. Excuse me. Dang, that's really delicious. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I've never had meatloaf before. And that means if I've never tried it, and I think it's really delicious, it's delicious. And you can go find the recipe. Go find this recipe on the website. Move on to the potatoes now. These are my not so famous garlic parsley potatoes. They're usually a hit at my house. Anytime I make them, everyone seems to like them, so. Oh yeah, good as always, especially with that beef gravy on there. That gravy is really nice too. It's not too overpowering or anything. Not too salty. Gives that little bit of beef flavor to them. That's delicious. I'm gonna have another bite of this meatloaf because this is so good. Now we got some red beans. Pretty basic here. Yeah, they're beans. Carrots and peas, classic. You know I love peas. Every episode there's peas. I'm like, oh, I love peas. Before we try this cornbread, which I'm really excited about because I love cornbread. And this is the first time I've made homemade cornbread, so we're gonna see how it is. Yeah, usually I make the delicious box cornbread. Rhymes with Giffy. You know what I'm saying? All right, we also got our orange beverage. Delicious. Oh, so refreshing. It is so hot in my house right now. I've had the oven on all day since like 10 o'clock this morning. It's been on like for 4 hours. It was like 85 degrees. That was the first super hot day of the year. So yeah, my house is toasty and that is very refreshing. Time for the cornbread. Let's see how this is. Wow. That's really freaking good. Oh my gosh. That's delicious. I was gonna make like a honey butter for on top, which I kind of ran out of time to do, which is unfortunate, but this honestly doesn't need it. It's super moist and sweet. It's got a nice sweet taste. It's not too over sweet, not too less sweet. It's just like perfect. Definitely try this out. And for the other thing I've never tried in my life, the bread pudding. Let's just go for it. Let's just try it. I think it looks good. Oh, I'm using the wrong fork. I brought an extra fork for a reason, and I forgot. And I brought a spoon. I even used the spoon. What am I doing here? All right, let's do this. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like a jiggly, soggy bread French toast cake thing. I don't know. It smells delicious, so it smells just like French toast. So cheers. Hold on a minute. Hold up. Hang on. That's really delicious, actually. I was not expecting that. And that is delicious. That is really good. One more swig of our orange beverage. Cheers to a good episode and a good meal. That was delicious. Tried a couple new things. Meatloaf for the first time, bread pudding for the first time. Kind of the first time making cornbread on my own. That box, wow, what a delicious meal. I know this wasn't the special meal request that he didn't even want a special meal at the end. This is the prison issued meal. And honestly, prison issued meal isn't as good as this, but solid last meal. There's a nice balance of everything here. Super, super, super delicious. And I'm super happy how this came out. And I hope you go make this meal for yourself because it is that gosh darn good. And you can find this recipe and all my other recipes at lastsupperpodcast.com/blog. Cheers. All right, and that concludes this episode of The Last Supper, a true crime podcast. Thank you for joining us. Wherever you're watching or listening, please make sure you follow it and subscribe to the show. Also, give a 5-star review. That really helps. Let's get the show up the chart. And also, spread the words. Tell your friends, tell your family. And until then, make sure you enjoy every meal because you never know when it'll be your last.